I actually think I should put my arms like that. It's manly.
Hi there, this is Janet Gershensiegel, and I'm the Lonely Writer. This is serious social media help for the independent author. And today I am talking to Dave Galanter, who is an author. So first off, hi and welcome.
Hi.
And anyway, I wanted to talk to you partly because you're an independent author, just like I am, because you're not represented by an agent. And so, and I figured that my listeners, such as they are, would be interested in hearing from you. So, can you tell me how did you get into writing in the first place?
A very strange way. I actually met a professional author at a bookstore. Mm-hmm. When I was 16 years old.
Okay.
And became friends with her and her husband, who she wrote with under her name. And oddly enough, I was not going into the bookstore to meet her. She just happened to be there. I had just read her book and really liked it. I've read other Star Trek books previously. Diane Carey is the person. Mm-hmm. And didn't care for them. I picked one up after a few years and read this one and really liked it and said, I'm going to go back to the bookstore and get more of these. These are actually pretty good books. And she just happened to be there as I was buying more books.
Terrific.
I asked her and her husband where they lived, and they said in town. I was surprised, and we just sort of became friends. And eventually, a couple of years later, a college professor convinced me to show some of my writing to them, knowing that I had friends who were authors. Mm-hmm. And in me, they saw something that they could, mold into a writer. And they sort of did, because Lord knows when I actually showed them my first work, there was very little to go on.
So would you say that that networking kind of helped you? I don't mean networking in the sense of, here's my business card and I'll take yours, but in the sense of meeting someone, getting to know them, that kind of thing?
Yeah, somewhat lucking into it, but also at least taking the advice and partially having the initiative to say to a professional, hey, will you look at my work? Mm-hmm. Because as an 18, 19-year-old, I wasn't going to do that without some prodding from someone. And Lord knows that at 18 or 19, the only thing I had going for me was that I really wanted to learn how to write. Uh-huh. That and at the time, Diane and Greg said that I knew where to begin and end a scene, which is apparently in me was sort of innate. And it's sort of a difficult thing for some writers to learn. Mm-hmm. Very often people will end a scene too late and begin it too early.
I've noticed sometimes with short stories with some people that it sort of drops off at the end, that people just sort of they run out of gas, or maybe they run out of space, like the word count is too high, and so they just sort of stop it, and it's like everything falls off a cliff.
Yeah, it can. It's a struggle for new writers, and in fact, it's one of the things I mention once or twice a year. Howie Weinstein invites me to be part of his little writing workshop at some local conventions, and it's one of the things I'm always keen to tell amateur writers is you're probably starting the scene a little too early and you're ending it a little too late. Chop the first bit off and the last bit off and see if it reads better. I mean, if you watch Indiana Jones, the first Indiana Jones movie, it starts at a very exciting place. You don't see him arriving on the boat.
Right. You don't need to. It's understood.
Right. But a lot of people will start with their characters as if they're embarking on a new adventure as opposed to in the middle of the new adventure. And it's way more exciting to start in the middle than to start at the beginning very often.
So so this is basically what's the inciting incident, quote unquote.
Yes.
Now, I know your best known work, I would say, is you're a tie-in writer for Star Trek. Two original series novels. One is called Troublesome Minds. Another one is Crisis of Consciousness. How did you get tapped to work for Trek? I think a lot of people would find that a dream, but I think a lot of people are also under the mistaken impression that the folks who write for Trek are fan fiction writers who got lucky, and I imagine that's not the case with you. So can you explain that?
Somewhat got lucky, and that again, when I met Diane and Greg, Diane Carey and her husband Greg Broder, they had already written a couple of Star Trek novels, and by sort of becoming friends with them, their relationship as writers is what my relationship with Greg as a writing team turned out to be, which is Greg works on plot and characterization, but Diane, and in my case, myself, do the writing. So we're actually busy writing the words of the book, then reads it, comments, and edits. Well, that made his time not as full as hers. So it was sort of to their advantage to make some extra money if they could have someone work with another writer. And that's sort of what they trained me to do. Diane taught me how to write. Greg eventually taught himself out of a job by teaching me how to plot and do characterization. Not sure I do as well as he does, but I certainly try. And not having to split the money when I do sell a book is nice for me.
Well, sure.
As they worked together, the money stayed within the house. But as he and I worked together, it was a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
And so I sort of fell into Star Trek, and I didn't need an agent because Greg and Diane knew the editors. And quite frankly, getting an agent later didn't seem like a good idea since I had the relationship with Pocketbooks already.
Mm-hmm.
The contract's pretty standard no matter what. It's not like your agent is going to weasel them out of more money because this is tie-in media and they have a certain budget for it and they can find other writers. I did once ask for a little more when I had written a couple of books, and I thought, hey, maybe I can throw some pretend weight around. And the editor at the time said, no, I can't do that. It's like, all right.
All right.
What are you going to do? And an agent wouldn't have helped me. So I sort of fell into writing Star Trek, and thankfully, mind you, had I not been good enough to publish, I don't think they would have. Which isn't to say that I'm the best of the Star Trek writers, but obviously I wasn't bad enough to kick out the door.
Now, are you still you're still working with them? Are you still writing with them?
I haven't done anything recently, but writing is not my full-time job. It's a part-time thing with me, so I don't always pitch them stories unless I have one that I'm sort of wanting to tell. Every once in a while when I say, oh, I have a story, I'll call the editor and I'll say I'd like to pitch this, and they're amenable to a pitch generally, as they always have been. At the moment, I don't have a Star Trek book burning. I'm working on something that is my own personal characters. So it's not tie-in media, and that is right now consuming my passion.
Fantastic. Actually, that was going to be one of my questions, was what you're working on now. If I was so I'm an indie writer, you're an indie writer. So for listeners, a choice between a good cover artist or a good editor. Let's say you can only afford one. Which do you pick?
Good editor.
Really?
Good editor. And by good editor, I mean somebody who's willing to be honest, someone who's obviously skilled in editing, hopefully. And the very first editor I ever had told me that he praises with faint dams, meaning if there's not a lot of comments, that means I did well.
Okay.
You don't need an editor that's going to tell you, hey, this was kick butt, way to go. You want an editor to tell you where things are wrong so that you can fix them. So if your editor is telling you how wonderful the book is all the time, that's probably not the editor you need.
Okay. And you also work with beta readers, is that correct?
I do. At least one, sometimes two. It's just, when the story is in your own head, you know what you're trying to put forward. And no matter how many times you read whatever it is you're writing, it's nearly impossible for you to catch story elements that aren't making sense to the end reader because you know where you're going with it. And beta readers are excellent for that, which isn't to say they can't, find something that I copy edited wrong or a misspelling or what have you. But the main reason I like a beta reader or two is so they'll say, hey, I don't understand this character's motivation. Hey, you had a plot thread here and you completely dropped it, which happens, by the way.
Of course.
Where did that go? So beta readers are excellent for that.
Yeah. How did your main character suddenly become 6 feet tall when she was 4 feet tall in the last paragraph? As if that matters, but in case it does.
Although with Star Trek, I don't even describe the main characters for the most part in Star Trek, at least not that sort of stuff, because people know who they are. Yeah. But certainly things with guest characters and so on and so forth. In fact, I think something came up like that. It was one character was missing a cloak.
Oops.
She was like, you had a cloak here. Where did it go? Oh, right. I forgot he had a cloak.
So a beta reader is an indispensable part of the process, would you say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you need critique. You need, look, I don't care how good of a writer you are. You're writing for an audience. So if you can pull a member or two of your audience and sort of have them read your book and they'll be honest with you and you can poll them to find out what they really thought, it's invaluable.
Okay. So anyway, I think that's all I've got for today. You are available online. I know you're on Twitter, and I know you've got there's an author page at Simon & Schuster. I will put all those links
at Amazon.com.
At Amazon, yes. And you go to conventions too because of the relationship. So are you going to Vegas or any place else like that?
Not going to Vegas. I am going to be at Shore Leave, which is fairly local to me in Baltimore. And there's, it's north of Baltimore. It's Towson, I think. And I also go to one in the Baltimore area every February, which is called Farpoint. And that's in Cockeysville. And just one is a small convention, Farpoint. The other is a somewhat bigger one. But great to meet the fans, talk to the fans, sign some books, and just, see what people are, get the pulse of fandom.
Sounds great. Sounds like a lot of fun. And so we'll see you on the circuit. So thank you very much.
Thank you.